Coming up, we have the Snowmass Story, featuring Tom Cardamone, Bill Madsen, and Alyssa Shenk. Tom is the executive director of Snowmass Discovery up in Snowmass Village, and he came to Colorado in 1972 and started ACES, Aspen Center for Environmental Studies.
John McBride, a local rancher, businessman, environmentalist, and hockey coach, who started out in the Roaring Fork Valley working on Snowmass Village in 1960s. So he has a lot of history.
Bill's in the penalty box.
Got it.
Bill is in the penalty box. Hello, everybody. Great to be here with you. And what I'd like to do is make a few remarks, show a quick 3-minute video, and then cap those remarks, get into a conversation with Alyssa and John, but engage you all as well. I understand this is a conference, and I need to confer with you because you've got a lot of background and expertise that could be very helpful to us as we work to tell a Snowmass story. And how appropriate that Ken was talking water. The beginning of the story started innocently enough with a water war. And if you know Colorado, you know that someone would sooner give up her husband than their water rights. And so water is very important. And in Snowmass Village, which is kind of a dry place right next to Snowmass Creek, which is a wet place, there was a hankering for the water across the divide. And after a lot of negotiation, no fisticuffs really, no gunplay, but a lot of negotiation, an agreement was struck to create a reservoir on top of a ridge, which is kind of an unusual place, but it worked very well to get water out of East Snowmass Creek and create the reservoir on top of the ridge and solve the water problem, part of our predilection for cooperation, which I'll get to a little later. And so that's the beginning of our story. And I like to ask the question, what's your story? It's a great way to get to know somebody, get to know them, get to know their place. The story of persons, the people, the story of place is really part of our identity. It's how we think of ourselves, how we think of where we live. Really important. The glue that holds us together, holds me together as a person, holds me together as a member of a community, and holds communities together. The Snowmass story really is about a treasure hunt of epic proportions that began with that reservoir project. And even after the treasures came to light, the leader of the treasure hunt I saw a couple years after the discovery. I haven't told you exactly what that discovery is yet. We'll get to that. The leader of that treasure hunt was a Geologic Society of America conference, and he turned to me and he said, after 15 scientists had presented the science, but it was kind of siloed and they were kind of cautious, you know how they can be, about what they were going to say and what they were going to commit to. And Kirk Johnson turned to me and he said, where's the story? He wanted that story. Now, he's a scientist. He's all about data, but he really wanted the story. Great scientists are part artist, and they're imaginative and creative, and they kind of look ahead and they look around the curve, and they do their best to put the story together before all the data is in. And that's what Kirk wanted. And in 2010, he was driving to that reservoir project I mentioned at the beginning because they'd, with a big bulldozer, turned up a couple of very big bones. Turned out to be the tusks of mammoths, and tusks, bones, teeth of mammoths. And Kirk was driving up, having just recently been at a conference of the National Council of the National Academy of Sciences, and he was part of the scientific council that informs that group. And they had just had a meeting, and they had been talking to each other saying, you know, part of our mission is to independently and unbiasedly inform the American public about critical issues that they care about, that are of concern to them. And they had just been talking about how great it would be to find a wonderful Ice Age site with a perfect record of climate change embedded amongst the big fossils so that they could teach the American public about climate change. And as Kirk was driving from Denver, he was at the Denver Museum at the time. Now he's the head of the National Museum in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. He was driving up and he said, "This could be it." And we think it is. And so that's sort of getting into our story. And with that, if we could roll the quick video to get a sense for that story, then we'll pick it up and get into a conversation with you all.
Just imagine a whole community of giant Ice Age mammals showing up unexpectedly in your backyard. There, right before your eyes, emerging from a reservoir excavation project, are fossil mammoths, mastodons, ancient horses, camels, and deer, giant ground sloths, and a huge extinct bison with 8-foot horns. What do? Well, you celebrate your good fortune. You excavate 6,000 big bones of 7 extinct species, and you communicate the emerging scientific story to the world, with wonderful detail provided by another 30,000 tiny bones, mostly tiger salamanders, and uncountable microfossils of pollen, insects, and more that reveal rich and changing ecosystems of the ancient past. The story is still emerging. Snowmass is home to the world's finest alpine Ice Age fossil discovery, the biggest group of mastodons ever found anywhere, and it's the dream site for nationally prominent scientists wishing for a perfectly preserved record of changing climate in the past. These ancient treasures inform and inspire stewardship of the future. The stories brought to light as those fossils emerge from the ground tell us about the future of snow and snowmass and all of Colorado. How to best tell the story? Provide our Ice Age fossils an appropriate home for communicating their message and the tools that bring the Ice Age ecosystems back to life. We enlist the best storytellers: the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, the National Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian. We also bring in local talent, like the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, the Aspen Science Center, and Colorado Mountain College's Isaacson School for New Media. We equip the Ice Age Discovery Center with the most compelling and engaging exhibits. We cultivate vitality, enhancing the guest experience in Snowmass, attracting more visitors, and also staging workshops, seminars, and conferences based on Ice Age science, involving scientists, teachers, communicators, and youth. We aspire to transform lives with the good news that these fossil treasures of the Ice Age can convey a hopeful vision for the future. One of the best teaching tools available today is called Science on a Sphere. Imagine yourself in outer space looking back at our home, the Earth. It's like looking at a crystal ball and you're able to see the Earth's past, present, and future in highly accurate scientific detail. This is a place where practicing scientists are actively studying the fossils of Snowmass, engaging the public in the excitement of discovery. We imagine a media center, a digital hub orchestrating a storytelling circle that engages the world's leading scientists who study the Ice Age past to inspire stewardship of the future. The natural beauty of Snowmass is such an important element of the experience here. The Ice Age Discovery Center is a portal. It gets people out of doors, onto the mountain, and into nature.
So we have this opportunity illustrated briefly for you. Snowmass has gone from a place with a mildly interesting 50-year history to a 130,000-year history, and a story worth telling, we think, to the world. And we'd like to engage with you, but first, John has a long history in Snowmass and in the Valley. Alyssa is on town council and working towards a lot of projects, one of which is the possibility of a centrally located discovery center that was depicted in the video, and we aspire to have maybe tens of thousands of visitors annually at this center, And if we can form a rolling museum, so to speak, that visits schools, for example, in communities throughout Colorado, we may reach hundreds of thousands. If we establish the digital storytelling circle that was referenced here that works with Ice Age sites all over the world to coordinate a storytelling circle that is conveying the same message, sort of culturally adapted, we could reach millions. And that is a great aspiration that we have, is to be of value to the community, but to reach far beyond the community. But let's talk about the community. John's perspective from the past and up to the present, and Alyssa's current view of things.
I just love being called on to go back to the past. But anyway, I came to work here for Bill Jans 50 years ago in 1966. He was the founder of Snowmass. There was just a meadow here at that time in the mountains. And he gave a group of us the challenge of building a new resort. His dream, his vision came from the Arlberg of Austria, St. Anton, Lech, Zurst, the small communities, and wanted to create 4 small walking villages and give a real sense of place to Snowmass. Unfortunately, when he left, numerous other owners came in and bought the resort, the interest, the ski company ran the mountain, but their vision was always different. So the end result was, instead of the small little dense walking villages, kind of a sprawl. There was the original village up there, then the sprawl down below, and then to East Village, and then down valley around the golf course and the rec center. So the vision of a really unique place like a European resort was lost. There was no there. One of the reasons I've been so excited about the concept of building this museum here is it would restore a real sense of place back to Snowmass. We live a couple valleys down. We never come here except to ski now and then. Very seldom ever go to dinner or anything. But if there was a museum here to bring kids and grandkids, it would change the character completely. I think Snowmass needs that kind of identity. I think it'd be one of the most unusual, exciting resorts anywhere in the world if it had that. I'm sure a number of you have been to Dinosaur National Park and seen what a gem that is. The Snowmass has been given this gift, and it's up to the council to do it. But I think it's just a great opportunity, and I really hope it happens.
Sure, yeah, tell us.
So when the bones were first discovered, there was a ton of excitement, and one of the really cool things is that they were able to take the bones into the schools, and the kids were able to see them and not touch them, but see them and really get a sense that this really did happen, and it wasn't just in some book. And it was really cool. And I think, since that's happened, there is the center up on the mall that kids from the school do come to. But as you see in the videos, there's a lot of endless possibilities that could happen if there was an actual facility that could accommodate large groups like schools coming on field trips. I mean, my kids often take field trips to Denver to visit the museums there. It's sort of that same sort of concept that people could come here and spend time, and whether it's specifically about the dig or about climate change or science, there's a lot of different opportunities, and no matter where it may be in Snowmass Village, I think the town is very supportive in the sense that we've identified this as one of the iconic treasures of Snowmass. Just the idea that there was these animals walking around sometimes stops me when I'm just driving around Snowmass, and I really stop and think about, oh my God, these animals were actually here. Right. There's just a lot of neat things, and I think for visitors to come here, like John was saying, and be able to, bring their kids in there and have it constantly changing and new things offered, whether it be speakers or different things, camps. I think that we're on the right track, and I think as a town, we really want to see a sufficient way to celebrate and honor what was found here.
It occurs to me that part of the story is that due to perhaps climate change, perhaps human hunters, perhaps disease, it's not sure. The scientists who study this aren't sure, but the wonderful animals that came out, those 7 that you saw and many others, are extinct, precipitated perhaps by climate change. And so it's not one of those stories with a great ending necessarily, but it's instructive, and in the video, a hopeful vision for the future is mentioned. That's really a Kirk Johnson idea. He calls it Vision 2100. What does that mean? What are the specifics of that? I would, rather than get deeply into the details, I'd just refer you to Jared Diamond, his book Collapse, the last few pages. He gives us a prescription for why he's hopeful and how we can be hopeful. And it's a compelling prescription. It's only really the last 2 pages, I think, of that book that provide that for us. So there is a good ending to the story that we can tell. And sometimes if you tell a story often enough, it happens. And so that would be part of our optimistic thinking as well. But let me ask you, the audience, a lot of your conversation is about technology and about policy, and we're talking about education and changing people's hearts and minds and shifting their perception of the world, their appreciation of the natural world. So we're this environmental education, essentially. And we're also talking about the future. And as Alyssa said, there are we can touch on the whole variety of life and earth sciences with this as the platform. But given your interest, how would you advise us to pursue our interests here that seem to have a pretty nice overlap? And questions for any of us or opinions? What's your story? Chip?
Thanks. I think that the Snowmass discovery is one of the most significant things that's ever happened in our valley since maybe the Utes came here the first time. And H.B. Cohenhoven came over with D.R.C. Brown in 1878. Okay, maybe that's a little bit overblown, but the point is that this is a significant paleontological discovery that I believe could put Snowmass on the map in a way that would attract all of the elementary schools and the high schools in the country to queue up, if we did it properly, to come here to experience something as extraordinary as how many mammoths and sloths did we get out of there, and how many are left in there? I mean, hundreds and perhaps thousands.
Yeah, right.
It's a very, very unique situation. So to be able to take that and then put Snowmass Village on the map in that way would be able to elevate all of the things that we, I think, hold valuable, including putting heads in beds. I mean, it's a win-win-win. But in my view, in a perfect world, and I'm probably going to get something thrown at me here, we would take the rodeo and we would take it and we'd put it down on Highway 82. And we do a collaboration with Aspen to do that. When I moved here, the rodeo was up in McLean Flats. And we would build there, when you come into our little village in that circle, the most stunning and astounding building that would have not only a stuffed mammoth and a sloth outside, perhaps, and we would demonstrate climate change from a 200,000 to a 20,000 year perspective. But then we would also demonstrate climate change, the anthropogenic climate change that we're now experiencing. And in this way, and I'm talking about something that would probably be on the magnitude of a $50 million or more building, but something that would really, really stimulate the conversation about what's happening now and connecting it to the past, John. And so, anyway, my question is, can we think big enough in our small village in order to accomplish and take advantage of something that was so extraordinary, that gift, and then connect that to all of the other institutions, the Aspen Institute, all the ones locally, Rocky Mountain Institute, but also the Smithsonian. I think that they'd want to partner with us on that. So that's the vision here. And the question I guess I have for you is, can we attract that kind of collective vision within the valley, within the philanthropic community, et cetera, and outside the valley as well, to have something as great as a Snowmass discovery be able to elevate to the national context? Thanks.
Well, quick answer, that's our goal, but other audience thoughts or questions?
I have a quick question. How many people come through Snowmass on high season?
Like
Skiers, visitors,
Hundreds of
tourists?
thousands of skier
I
days.
don't know what the number is.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of skier days.
So just putting my marketing cap on, that's such a huge opportunity to build the kind of vision Chip just, outlined, that many people would be seeing that exhibitor, so you could, or that exhibit, so you could sell sponsorship space to people that are aligned with our vision, whether it's a Patagonia or someone that connects all the dots to skiing, climate change, less snow every year. So anyway, it's just a suggestion.
Well, in a facility like this, it can serve as a storefront for ideas, and can be collaborative with other groups to do that kind of work. There was a question up front here. Adrian, do you have a mic?
I'm thinking, of course, affiliating the learning experience with the outdoor and sport experience would be phenomenal, of course, for kids at any age. But I wonder, this is a unique situation. I mean, obviously, most museums are situated in large metropolitan areas, and you have large flow of people coming through. So this would be a unique destination. So it would seem you'd have to have some academic affiliations and to develop some plan on continuing excavation and exploration to continue to discover things that would bring people here to experience that process. So are there areas where you think you could do that?
Well, we are a scientific partner of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We're connected at the hip to the Smithsonian. We're working with the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. So we're sensitive to those necessities of connection to academic institutions. We're also nicely arm's length so that we can do that storytelling, which academia, because of their hesitance to make great leaps unless they're great scientists, resists. And so yes, those connections are important. And something I've learned by traveling to various museums in urban areas that you've mentioned is that, yes, they have millions of visitors a year. The Smithsonian, 7 million, Denver, over 1 million. And yet they bemoan the fact that they are the destination, and what they really want to be is the portal. And they want to, if they're a nature museum, they want to get people into their doors, then out of doors. And here they're somewhat jealous of this setting. They know that our visitorship will be much smaller, but that will accomplish what they would love to accomplish, which is people will come through the portal, the facility, and end up in nature, learning firsthand from from the source.
Any place where there's going to be any further exploration?
Well, it's a 15-acre reservoir. Only 10% of the wind-borne silt that covered the fossils was excavated out in order to create the dam, and so 90% of the silt is still there, presumably 90% of the fossils. So if we found 35 mammoths, or mastodons rather, there might be 350 more. If we're getting towards the close, a closing thought that I've had is that if you read E.O. Wilson and maybe Tim Flannery, you understand that about 100,000 years ago, a certain species almost went extinct. There were maybe 1,000 breeding pairs left, and they figured out a few things. They figured out how to shift to a high-energy diet, meat in that case. They figured out how to up their technological expertise, making better tools, and they figured out how to cooperate, which I know is surprising because that's us. And there were only maybe 1,000 breeding pairs of us in Africa 100,000 years ago. And we got a few things together, and some of us, ancestors, not us, I know that, we weren't there. Some of us made it out of Africa and went to the Altai, went to Scandinavia, made skis to continue chasing Ice Age beasts for that high energy lifestyle. And then some of them came to Snowmass, and with that cooperative spirit started digging a reservoir as a water conservation measure. And out of that project came animals that had been, that were resurrected after 50 or 100,000 years or 130,000 years, that through translation by scientists started talking to us about where we're headed and what we should consider, things like long-range planning and bold decision-making. And so we're excited to be the unexpected recipients of this great treasure. But I invite you all to continue engaging with us and communicating with us your thoughts. And there's a thought in the back right there and another one here.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on kind of what they said. I saw the video and I followed this. I actually came to Snowmass in '89, learned to snowboard, was here 7 years, and a lot of things I learned here drives what I do today. But I think you're missing one thing here is we've got this past, we've got this educational experience. So my suggestion would be to you that you make this building a model of how we solve climate change by making it net zero, natural materials, low VOC. And if it's going to be such a monumental $50 million, $60 million project, that you really make that part of the solution as well. And I've been coming back to Snowmass ever since I left every year for concerts and things. And I don't see as much solar here on buildings as I thought I would see. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll just say one thing about that.
Yeah.
I just want to say that's a good comment. I just want to mention to all of you, can you imagine being the bulldozer operator up there cleaning out a pond and unearthing an 8-foot-long bone? Can you imagine that? You know, Tom's talking, 100,000 years ago. Bear in mind, in 30 years, there may be no snow here. So imagine how important that museum would be then. That would hold this whole place together, like dinosaur.
Yeah, good thought. Lori?
I just want to say that I think the way you pulled the whole story together is wonderful for children. There's nothing that kids love more than a mystery and trying to solve the mystery of how this all happened. And I think your story, along with the great building, you can't lose.
Thank you, Lori. We have a minute left. Bring me your business card, your contact information. Let's establish a circle of communication so that your good ideas can keep flowing in our direction, and we can test our direction back with you for course corrections that you might have for us as we move forward. And thank you.
If you haven't been able to go see those fossils on display, I recommend you head up there and check it out because it is impressive. Coming up, first, we want to thank Etho Capital again for being an AREDAY sponsor. Etho Capital